So thanks for being here. I guess we just had an opportunity to introduce each other, but my name is Andrew Hanna, so I teach at the university in the College of Business, and for a number of years I've been teaching entrepreneurship, and I teach organizational behavior, which I always get kind of like weird looks from people when I tell them that I teach org behavior, but it's just how do we manage when we put people into groups. So when we put people together and hopefully we have a common thing we're working on, how do we manage things like that? So I guess in less formal terms, I usually just tell my students, my classes are kind of about like, how do we help you understand people well enough to not be an asshole once you're in charge of them. So that's kind of what I'm asking. I've also taught entrepreneurship for a long time. And I teach about 1,000 students a year, so I thought this worked well because I'm very familiar with this concept of hope, being somebody in charge of educating 1,000 students a year. So always have to kind of grasp all of that. So somebody, I guess, a lot smarter than me when I started doing more speaking told me we always should pose a question and get people to start thinking at the beginning of it. So I guess I'll do that. I just wrote this question down for us to kind of think about when we get on it, and that was, I guess, this morning when you woke up, or every day, what do you wake up and see? Because I guess I talk with some people, and like my students a lot too, like there's a very varied response to this question when I pose it to class. Because I love the comment a few ago about it really is all about how you choose to see things. I guess doing what I do, I want to see that more and more and more every single day, right? And so I always pose that with my students because it seems to be like a growing number of people that I think are, at least at face value, like losing that concept a little bit. It's a little disheartening sometimes. And so I always pose to them, and I'm like, do you get up in the day and you see like the world is a big opportunity and has a lot of, things you could accomplish and great people in it, or do you wake up and you see, a world that is, filled with injustice, with people that can't be trusted, and all those kinds of things? And it's a huge question for us to think about because here's the thing, give me one of these and give me 30 seconds, and I can find you plenty of things to justify either of those attitudes, right? And that's what's so important about it, right? So even though I'm a professor, that question isn't meant to just be completely, rhetorical and like get you thinking. So not just a thought exercise for us, but something I think we need to stay conscious of. Because there's this guy that I've gotten really into his research lately, and I don't know if any of you have read stuff by, there's a Stanford psychologist, his name is Jamil Zaki. And Jamil Zaki has some fascinating research that gets at like our meta-attitudes about trust and hope and things like that in society. And what was kind of, concerning about some of the findings from his research was in 2025, when we were looking at people under the age of 25, we found only 1 in 5 of them reported that they think other people in the world can be trusted. We got about 20%, right? And that's probably not the bar that we're shooting for, right, most of the time. And so I just kind of want to talk about, I suppose, hope is a revolutionary way of thinking, right? It can really transform the way we see life in general. So when I teach entrepreneurship, I kind of see this reflected in there too. Is we always challenge the students to solve a problem for people. And the big thing, like the biggest trend amongst a bunch of my entrepreneur students the last couple of years was they said the thing they want to solve, or the big problem in the world, is they're like, I need to find better ways to avoid the other 8 billion people in the world, right? And that's kind of sad. I mean, I love being here with like people like everybody in this room right here. I think when we have these good experiences, like we see the value of community. And I'll talk with Nick a lot about that idea. We feel good when we're out here like this, but we're almost kind of being conditioned into avoiding it and thinking that it's a bad thing. And I think it's kind of sad. And so hope plays a really big role in this. So a lot of times when I talk to students, I want to emphasize this idea is we think that cynicism is going to be the thing that saves us from this like reality that other people can't be trusted and that, it's a scary world. And so people will tell you, you can run into people all the time that are going to be like, oh, well, I've developed this, I'm not cynical, I'm being realistic. Or they're like, I'm just trying to, like adopt a mindset that's going to protect me most. But get into research on cynicism and you find it's like absolutely not the case, right? Cynical people that are, less hopeful and positive about the world, like they perform worse, they feel worse, they connect less, they're engaged less with their communities, and this is a vicious Mobius loop in their life, right? Because it just perpetuates the same wrong things forever. And then we know from things like the idea of attribution in our mind that then the more we see something, the more we go, oh, it must be true. But we don't think about the fact we might be creating that truth for ourselves too, and that's the tough thing about it. So I always introduce this idea of hopeful skepticism to my students, right? And this is an idea, right? Is because skepticism is different than cynicism. Skepticism just means I want some type of evidence to back up, what I believe. And what's cool about, that being different than, let's say, like, some people tell us we got rose-colored glasses on when we're really optimistic all the time. We have this belief, right? The belief of optimism is that things, no matter what, will get better. But, skepticism, and, well, we introduce hope into this skepticism idea. We take an active role in this, and hope becomes this thing where we go, things could get better, right? And I think that's something we want to grasp onto, right? One of those is like, oh, things will get better no matter what, so we kind of place it in other people's hands, right? But we know that's probably not our best approach to it either. So I always tell them about this idea of hopeful skepticism is it's an openness to the world that things could get better, and like especially if I decide to have an active hand in it, things could definitely get better, and I can see how, right? And this is the root of a lot of the anxieties and the trouble with a lot of the young people that I work with now is they just don't see how it's going to happen. And we're bombarded with the bad attitudes of other people all over the place. We see very prevalent, and when we get into that, like echo chamber of everything being bad, there's no doubt we're going to start to adopt that. It has a contagion on our psyche. We're just not going to be as good if that's all we expose ourselves to. So practicing hopeful skepticism is something that we do a lot. I teach a class called Designing Your Life, and if anybody's familiar with Bill Burnett, who is at the Stanford Design School, he came up with this design thinking framework. We use it in entrepreneurship all the time, which is just want to do something valuable. Let's help you figure out how to get to the root of what's actually happening, so that then you can design something that actually addresses it and brings actual value because it solves what's at the root of the problem. And we developed, my buddy Mike Smith, some of you might know Mike here in Lincoln, he founded the Bay over on Y Street, and Mike and I have been really good buds for a long time, and he came to me at one point and was like, what, could we maybe teach a class at the university about introducing this design thinking stuff into helping the students with their biggest problem they all tell us is, I don't know where I'm going in life, I don't think I have a plan. When everybody just tells me, don't worry, it'll work out, it does nothing to help with my anxiety about how that's going to happen, because I might believe it, but until I know how I'm going to do it, it's still just words, right? And a lot of times it feels dismissive from people because it just seems like they're going, how did you just go figure it out? I had to do that too. And we don't necessarily appreciate that. So we created a class, and we've taught it to almost 100 students now. We teach it over at the Bay, and it's how do you design your life? And we use that same principle is how we get to the core things that you're all about. Like, what do you believe in? What really gets you going? What kind of things you want to, let's say, avoid in life? We have some really deep, awesome conversations about this idea with them, and then we go, at the end of these 4 weeks, we go, let's put a plan together that's actually actionable and things you can do each year for the next 5 years, and we create 3 different paths so we don't feel like there could be only one, and if I'm not on it, then everything is just in ruin, right? And we help them get focused, come up with an actionable plan, or multiple of them that they can be excited about. It's one of the best classes we ever do, and we do this by, I ask them to do a reasons to be hopeful journal. And so we meet for 4 weeks, and during that time we use this thing called experience sampling methodology, which essentially is like, I want to hear from them multiple times a day. And so what we do is we set up this random pinging system that we give all of their cell phones, numbers and everything, and random times every day, multiple times, their phone will go off. And once it goes off, they got 2 minutes to get on the platform, and they have to immediately tell me, like, what's something that you see around you right now that gives you, like, hope that things could be better. And I want you to pay specific attention to good deeds by people around you right now you can see going on, even if you're just seeing them from a distance. But essentially, you know, like, I've asked them, I put a quote in here because I absolutely loved it, and I said the result of this was, the words of one of my students in their final reflection this last year. She said, kind of seemed like just a habit of forcing myself to notice the good turned into a habit in my mind. It was like knowing I wanted to share positive stories popped up an antenna out of my head, and it made me more curious and hungry for evidence of the good in people. Awesome, right? That's like that's just beautiful to hear from my students, because usually it's like, how many words can I use to like restate the question you just asked? Right? So, you know, I'm looking at this, I'm like, this might be an idea. This person will like make their life better because of it, you know? And so that practice is certainly simple. It's nothing profound, but it's very transformative for these young people when we go. Challenge yourself to see if you can actually back up your cynical attitude. And if we tell you, hey, go look for the good, it's really funny how real quickly you'll develop this idea that maybe people are a little better than I thought. And so I just wanted to connect this to like something, I guess, a little deeper in our life, and that's my work with like helping people create those meaningful lives, right? And so I always pose to them that like hope's a big part of this class. And this idea things could be better, and that's why they chose to be there in the first place. So we always pose this question to everybody at the beginning, you know, what if hope became the basic principle on which you design your life? How would your choices be different? Or the things you go choose to do, the things you focus on, how would it be different for you? Because if we know cynicism creates toxic self-fulfilling prophecies, then even this skeptical or this hopeful skepticism, it can create positive ones as well, because it's the exact same thing at play, right? It's just a mechanism that, you know, helps churn out, you know, our attitudes into, you know, our cognition, into our behavior, back into our cognition, back into like reestablishing the very foundations of how we like look at everything and behave and interact with the world again, right? And so we bring out the best of ourselves and others if we choose like the good friend, right? So, and it's basically like I have really outspoken students too, and some of them just go like, this just seems kind of like, I don't know, stupid. You know, and some of them go like, oh, that's kind of nice, like, that's interesting, you get paid to just tell people that. You know, but I was trying to like emphasize, you know, like, Nick would be a great guy as an example for me, is, you know, you run into people around you who exude the idea of like hope, and I think you'll find that hope's more like a fiery, radical thing than it is like a passive thing where we just go like, well, we'll just allow it. I'm sure it'll work out. I'm sure like somebody else will do something, right? So we just don't want it to really like turn into that. And so I just want to close, you know, like when I was talking about this, I couldn't help but go back to thinking about an example from somebody that I think is one of my like biggest mentors, and kind of maybe like one of my biggest sources of hope. And that is, if any of you have ever met Dr. Sam Nelson. So Sam is the director of the Center for Entrepreneurship in Nebraska, and this guy kind of like pulled me out of a really difficult time in my life, and was very hopeful things could be better for me, and took a really active role in helping me kind of like develop where I wanted to go in life. And I was very simply, I don't think, really doing much of anything when we ran into each other 20 years ago. And he kept pushing me to like do the next big thing. I never thought I would be doing what I'm doing now. And he was kind of this guy who was always like, dude, you know it can be better. He's like, if I got through this, you can do it. Like, trust me. And he's like, I can help you figure out how. And he gave me all of these opportunities, push myself, and like kind of believe in this idea, like I could be better if I want to be an active part in that process, right? And this year I've talked to him a lot because unfortunately, like Sam found out earlier this year that he had a pretty aggressive cancer diagnosis this year, and has been going through all of that and been absent from the university for maybe the last 5 months or so. And happy to say that everything has ended up really nicely. It was a really tough process with him. I've talked to him a ton. He had mouth cancer. He is a great speaker, really wise guy and everything, but like during this whole situation, he completely had his ability to talk taken away. He had to have a big portion of his tongue removed. He had to live for a bunch of weeks with like a feeding tube in, all these kinds of things. Those really foundational principles about his life are kind of like snatched away really quickly. And I've had a bunch of really amazing conversations with him because I think this is a time where nobody would fault him for not being hopeful and optimistic, right? There would probably be enough where if you go, if I'm skeptical and I want to see things that tell me things aren't okay, you probably can find those in a time like that, right? But the last couple of months, I've talked with him a bunch in text. I send stuff to Sky every morning when I wake up, seeing how he's doing, all these things. And I had a really awesome conversation with him. He told me, of course, I was really saddened to find out this thing about myself, but at the same time, he said, I really discovered a good sense in the value of being here and being an active, live member of the world, right? And I think he said he had no choice but to let that good feeling, the beautiful element of the world also grow in him as a result of finding out this was going to be the case. So he said he's really grateful for that continued chance to keep believing things can be better. So I searched through our conversations. I just asked him if I could share that with you too. Because I talked with him recently one morning, and he had said, I really just loved this, and kind of kept this text, and he said, well, buddy, none of us gets to live forever, but most of us are never told to our faces that this might be it, right? And he said, all this has just shown me the importance of living. And so I think that response really illustrates a pretty profound truth for all of us. So, there's a big difference between a long life and a good one. But we're going to probably choose how long a life is, but we have active choice with our attitude, all those kinds of things about whether we want to be an active hand in making it a good one, no matter how long it is, right? And so, when Nick asked me to come over here today and speak a little bit, I was pumped because I was these kinds of fun talks and, posing challenges to people, maybe one person once in a while is open for it, right? And whenever I talk about something like this, I always kind of give people, I say, I was just want to throw that challenge out there for people to kind of grasp onto hope as their basic life design principle. When you start thinking about those things that you don't want to violate, those really important core things that you make your decisions based on, making it off of hope in this boundless opportunity in the world to always be able to be better is an awesome founding principle for us to kind of have our lives right on, especially when they're not feeling good in the moment, right? I would just say I always try to push people and really go for cultivating that intent of goodness, because I think I even said to my partner yesterday, I told her I wasn't feeling real great yesterday. I went out on the road. I ride my little scooter over here everywhere, and sometimes people will throw things at you from their car and stuff, and I have guys tell me that I'm not 12 years old, I shouldn't be riding around on a scooter. But I told her yesterday, I was like, man, I was ready that I'm usually assuming that people are upset with me if somebody honks at me or something on the road. And yesterday I had 2 of these where I went I looked over at some guy, I was and I kind of put my head for months, I was like, yeah, and he was just that's so cool, that thing has a blinker on it. He's like, that's so neat. He's like, I love that. And I was like, hey, thanks, man. And he was like, yeah, I just wanted to tell you, thanks. And then last night I go and pick her up, and I'm in my Jeep. We're gonna put all the stuff in my Jeep from her pop-up market thing, and one of these bus drivers is honking at me, sitting next to me, and I was like, what's going on? And she's like, and I put my thing down, she's like, I don't know the color of your car. She's like, that's one of the coolest cars I've ever seen. She's like, you care if I take a picture of it? And I was like, sure. And I was just like, again, you know, like, start being conscious of it, you start seeing it everywhere, right? It's just one of those where, like, I really, like, you know, lean in and realize my attitude is driving all of that, where both of those situations, I'm like, what's this person going to yell at me about? And both of those, it was somebody going like, hey man, I think something about what you're doing is cool. And I was like, all right, yeah, okay, I get it, right? So I think that just some of that, you know, like the research tells us, right? I always got to go back to this, right? Design our lives out of hope instead of, you know, cynicism. We don't just feel better. I think all around in our career, in our relationships, our engagement, all those kinds of things, all of them are better, right? We don't just feel it like life is better in those situations for us. So you make that choice, you know, every morning when we wake up and go like, I'm going to lean into that. I'm actually going to believe in this idea things could be better for myself. Then I think we just wake up every day and choose to like be an active part in making sure that does happen, right? So, you know, I know you all understand that because we're all sitting in this room together this morning. So I think we all have a certain element of buy-in in this idea together, right? But this is the outcome of that. And, you know, our big environments, our communities and things like that, when I teach org behavior, it's all about, you guys need to understand, like, there is no such thing as this group. It's just a bunch of people, right? And so we think it's some, like, insurmountable thing to, you know, change things as one person, but it's like, yeah, if we all, it's kind of one of these principles, you know, we all adopt kind of hope as our guiding light in this element, then we all actively like make the right decisions to make sure that hope kind of becomes a principle of our society. And when I tie that back to this, you know, my economics background and things like that, our most recent research has found that if we collectively as a group of people in a society have trust and hope as these founding elements, it's actually, to most people, in their well-being and like, I guess how good they report their life being, it is worth more than a 40% increase in their income.
Wow.
So, which is pretty amazing, right? And not to be all business and South even math, right? But all of these things together kind of tell me why like hope isn't just like this nice passive idea that we kind of like casually throw around here. It really becomes like the necessary founding principle for all of us. So, I guess wrapping that one up, I guess I would just encourage all of us to continue this on. I think we all kind of are bought in, right? But encourage us to keep it up because this kind of principle of hope we kind of came here on this morning is very needed right now. So, that's being somewhat decent. You said you weren't worried about that.
Yeah, does feedback questions, did it spark anything for anybody?
Left them speechless. No.
Can I just share something?
Please.
We just went recently to a dance that this fraternity that's all over the country called Pi Kappa Phi, and the ability experience and the journey of hope. These guys raise their own funds and start training in January, and two groups of them, like about 30 each, start from the West Coast and bicycle completely across the country to raise awareness for people with developmental disabilities. And then when they stop every year here, they have a dance. So this young lady gets to dance with all these cool college guys. I just look at them and my mind is blown. Like, who are you? You choose to give yourself, and these aren't like jock guys. These are like engineering majors, you know, and they train so they're able to cross the mountains on their bikes, you know, and they stop in different towns on the way, all the way. And it makes me cry every time I go, because I love finding experiences like that. That gives me such great hope for this world.
Yeah, you gotta love that like active participation in it, right? We talk about that optimism, hope difference a lot in my class, and I don't know if you guys know the meme of the cartoon dog that's sitting in the room and everything's on fire. And he's sitting there and he says, "Oh, this is fine." Right? And I was telling him that is optimism. And hope is, oh, the room's on fire, but I think we probably can put it out. That's hope for me, right? It's like there's a way to put the fire out in this room, and we will be okay, right? And I love hearing those stories where just people choosing to be an active part in it, because I'm always like, that's really our.
Yeah.
That's the critical part, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm right in your demographic, right? College kids.
Yeah.
And what you're saying about sort of that doomerism mindset that everybody has is so true. Everybody's like, well, the world's ending, so what if I overdraft my credit card a little bit? I'm gonna go get stuff like that. It's true, but I love what you said about sort of this, what was the sort of hopeful skepticism, because like I said, I'm someone who studies the Middle Ages, so when the plague was happening, I was the one who was telling my mom, this is going to be bad. This is going to be bad. It has all the signs of the plague, and the world is going to shut down. COVID. And she was like, no, it's going to be fine. It's not even in New York yet. It's just in New York, and it's just in California, and it's not going to reach Nebraska, and everything's going to be fine. And I'm like, no. I've been studying the Black Plague since I was 10 years old. So, while this was all happening, I was 14. I was, losing my mind, stuck inside, had no friends, awful times, and that was the majority of my teenage experience. That is, a 5-year chunk out of my 20-year life. That's a quarter of my life. It was insanity. But since coming out of it, I've been trying to be more hopeful and very skeptical. But that hopeful skepticism, I love the way that you put it into words.
Yeah.
And the way that it's, okay, this is happening and it is very bad. But what can I do? And so,
Yeah. Well, no, actually being engaged in doing something and, being an active part, that's just, I've said that a million times in my classes. All these ideas, I've said this forever, right? There's, I can remember what it was, but the fulfillment that you're searching for is in the work that you're avoiding, that idea, right? And nobody thinks that, being an active hand and working at it is the part that they actually needed and the part that they actually enjoyed, not necessarily being at the end, but every time you do something big, you realize that, I looked forever really forward and let's say graduating for the final time. And then it was not that great when still while I was just standing on the stage, it was over and I was like, oh, it was actually the pursuit of something better the entire time. That was what was good about it, right? And so I emphasize that a ton as well, because I think when people kind of take that ownership and are actively working on making things better, that's actually what they're looking for.
The class that you teach at the Bay, is that for high school kids, the Bay kids, or is it for anybody or college kids?
We have a mix. So we went through the very tiring process. It's an official university course.
Okay.
So students get credit for it. We usually have 30 to 40 of them every semester to take it, and we have it meet off campus at the Bay, just kind of change up the environment a little bit for them. But it is anyone at the university can take it, and as well as we invite all the students that are in the gap year program at the Bay, that are the 18 to 24-year-olds, because they really lean into this class sometimes, because that's what they're in gap year really to do, is where am I actually going with all this, how do I get myself set up with what I want. And so really fun to bring them in, but we've had undergrads, we've had all the way up through, I 10 years for this degree and you don't know what you're gonna do? And they're like, yeah, you understand why it makes me a little nervous? And I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just like, and they were like, most of the time I just avoided figuring that out by going, oh, there's another degree, I guess I'll just get that. And I'll bet I'll know by the end of that one, and like, you know.
I work with some of those at the law school every year too.
Yeah, absolutely. You start it and the reality is always a little different, and then you go like, oh, is that, because I did the LSAT when I was younger, and I was thinking about doing it, and then I ultimately, you know, like, I said it's tongue in cheek, but like, I was like, do I want to study rules for a living? And I was like, I don't like the rules all that much, maybe not. So, you know, so I could appreciate that a ton. So, yeah, it's just, when we talk entrepreneurship, we're always like, we're always just focused no matter what, on like, how do we help solve a problem for a group of people? And there's no group of people I spend more time around than the young people at the college, and you just listen to them, you can tell what's ailing usually. So we just thought we'd try to be proactive and have an active hand and listen to our own advice a little bit, so.
All right, another.